readers,
reviewers,
countrymen,
lend us your ears. Welcome back to the channel. Today we will be talking about our favourite debuts of all time. Of course, this is a subjective list. Reading is subjective, and if I had my way, I would be talking about my top 50 debuts today. But Ed hasn't got time for that, and I imagine you don't either.
You're saying that you have enough
I
time
have
for that.
as much spare time as needed to talk about every debut that I have ever read. Much spare time. But yeah, so I do feel sick to the pit of my stomach because we've chosen 11 books instead of 10.
Why have we chosen 11?
Because I just couldn't get rid of one. I have 6 and I just couldn't eliminate any. So that would be nasty to them.
People are going to unsubscribe to us
because there's 11 instead of 10. Please don't. Maybe you'll be happy there's an extra book. Let us know if you are. But you know what? Because there are 11 books, I will start. And my first book is A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. This is
the one you couldn't get rid of?
All of them I couldn't get rid of.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is dystopian from the time. It was written quite a few decades ago now, but it's actually would be set in the past if you're reading it now. It's one of those things, like 1984. It's actually in the past, but it was written in the future originally. So yeah, I'm sure I don't need to explain that again. But if you enjoy Mark Lawrence's writing, then you may be interested to hear that the inspiration for his main character, Jorg Ankrath, in his first trilogy was inspired by Alex from Clockwork Orange. So yes, he's not a nice piece of work. He is nasty. Him and his droogs, his gang, go about doing many misdeeds, but he gets caught doing something, and through some means or another he is put through something called the Ludovico technique. But that is all I'll say on the premise. It's brilliantly written. It's from the perspective of Alex, which is very disturbing but very engaging as well. His charisma really takes you by surprise but really engages you, as I said, as well. And I thought absolutely fantastic debut, absolutely fantastic book. This really just hooked me from page 1 till the very end. And I know that is a saying that many people always say, but I mean it with this one.
Do you know, talking of hooks, when people say it had me on tender hooks, it's actually tenter hooks, not tender hooks. Tenter hooks. Like type of hook.
Wow.
Tenter hook, not tender hook.
That is a revelation.
Hook.
That is a revelation.
It's a tenter hook, not a
tenter hook. Yeah. Why are you saying it again? And again.
Yeah, it's not tender hooks. So they wouldn't be tender, would they?
Tender hooks. They're really soft.
Tenter hooks.
Tenter hooks.
Tenter hooks. And the next...
Is it a real word now?
No, it doesn't. The next book for me, the first one for me, is Blackwing by Ed McDonald. This is one of my favourite debuts because I think Ed McDonald crafted a very unique and intrepid fantasy world here within Blackwing. It follows the main character called Ryholt Galharrow, and he is kind of a detective, like a PI basically, but in a fantasy world. The world building is fantastic, I think, because it's very flintlock based fantasy, which is a fantasy we haven't really seen too much. The magic system is very intriguing, and there are some very interesting concepts that haven't really been explored in other books. So I think it had this very original feel to it. Ed McDonald is a very visceral writer. I think his prose is very direct and straight to the point, and it's not very colourful. It's pretty bleak, and that definitely it reflects the world. I think a little bit like how Cormac McCarthy will describe the landscape, and it's like a caricature. I felt like the prose here was actually alive, and it really fed into the book, which was really, really engaging to read. I've read Daughter of Red Winter. Yeah, have you as well? I have read it. Yeah, the prose is very different. But talking about the weather and the kind of landscape acting as another character, it did feel like that in Daughter of Red Winter as well. Sure, yeah. I'd say Blackwing is a fantastic debut because of the pacing, because each chapter kind of ends on a cliffhanger. It's very, very easy to have that feel of I'll just read one more chapter before bed, and then before you know it, you've read 35 chapters and you've read it all in one day. It's a good problem to have. It is a really good problem to have. Blackwing I think is one of my favourite books, fantasy books ever of all time. You keep recommending it to me, saying it's a good series. I think the first book is the best in the trilogy. But yeah, Blackwing's a fantastic book because the main character is awesome as well. It's a very dark book, it's very bleak, very grey, but it's very engaging to read. Very nice, Ed, and one I definitely need to pick up as well, and hopefully you've intrigued some people too as well. That's the point of these videos. We want to spread the book love, don't we? But now on to the next book. Share the load. And that is Share the Load. The Children of Gods and Fighting
The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless. This is a brilliant book in my opinion. We have done a review on the channel for it, haven't we?
Yes, we have, and we've also interviewed the authoress herself.
So yes, if you enjoy... Authoress?
Yeah, like actress,
but it is now.
But better.
But yeah, so if you're intrigued by what I say about the Children of Gods and Fighting Men, you've got a review you can go watch and an interview. So hopefully we've spoiled you in that arena. But yeah, this is historical fantasy set in Ireland during the late 10th century. So there's the conflict between kind of the pagans and the new kind of Christian faith coming along. But there's Irish mythology involved, as we have two different mythological groups that are present who... they have some abilities which you can tell would not be in the normal world, and that is where the kind of fantastical elements come in, but they're quite low throughout the book, and it's more about the political machinations.
We have very low key, isn't it?
Exactly, we have two main, but it's always lurking in the background where you know something's about to happen. We have two leading female perspectives, one of these mythological groups and another from the other group. So yeah, I really like that kind of contrast of how they view the other, and also seeing it from the perspective of people who look upon mortals in a very different way. It was really brilliantly done, and also showing that kind of the power dynamic, that how it changes, and how these women, one of them is very politically devious, but she has to do it to survive, because obviously 10th century hegemonic values, patriarchal society, but she's very clever in how she manages to turn things her way, and we've got that question of what is her motivation. Is it to keep her son alive, or is it something else, a bit colder perhaps? But yeah, so there's a lot of questions. Shauna Lawless does a brilliant job with character, and is a book both myself and my brother absolutely loved. So yeah, as I said, if you're intrigued by that, go check out the review or the interview, or why not, even better, just go buy the book and read it.
Yeah.
Advice from me.
And the next one for me is, how can I have a best debut list without having Papa Gwynne in there? Malice by John Gwynne. The Faith and the Fallen, Book 1 of the Banished Lands. This is an amazing debut, I believe. You believe? Yeah.
I was scanning through it the other day, and then I just got hooked and read loads.
But you're on tenterhooks.
I was on tenterhooks. But it's one of those, I see quite a lot of people say that they really enjoy Malice, but they prefer the others because they're faster paced. But this is so fast paced as well. There's a lot of character work, obviously it's a big book, but it's one of those, I think my book review said it, that it's a bit like what you said. What was the last bit? Raven. What's it called?
Keep going.
Raven.
Come on.
Blackwing. Blackwing, yes. That you can just read one chapter after the other. And I remember my book review saying that he's a big fan of Brandon Sanderson, but with Brandon Sanderson's books, he can't blitz through them like that. He has to take them in bits and pieces. Whereas he felt with The Faith and the Fallen, even though they're chonkers of books, that you can just read them in one big go. And
I think we've seen this kind of. Well, I particularly have seen this because I remember the very first draft of Malice, when it was called something very different, and when it had some very different characters, and when the plot was very different as well, and seeing how it changed. And I read this recently,
and about quadruple the size.
And I read this recently, and I was like, how the hell did Dad manage to have all these different POVs and kind of have them all interlink and have all of these threads continue through the books? It is amazing. But I think it's an amazing debut because it starts off feeling very traditional, doesn't it? It has those kind of familiar fantasy feels, but
that nostalgic
I think you need to trust Dad, because he will take those away. He will rip those. What are they called again? What's that word? Tropes, exactly. He'll rip those tropes away. He will subvert them before your very eyes, whether it's in this book or the rest of the books. But I think the groundwork here is set up perfectly. One of the reasons why I love this as a debut is because you really see how brutal Dad is as well. And I think
he's earned his reputation.
POVs die, POVs hurt each other, POVs hate each other, and they're not always good. So
this is not a happy book. There are happy moments, characters you love, and
Disney here. No Disney here.
Ed, at the end of Ruin, Ed came out crying when he read the ending, and he said, "You have to change it. I don't like this book because of the ending."
And you ruined the book.
And Papa Gwynne,
if you've read Ruin, you know why.
I think Papa Gwynne put a hand on your shoulder, didn't he? And he said, "I'm sorry, I can't have Disney."
Yeah, that was a bit insulting, really. But anyway, there is a Disney film that actually is like that, isn't there? Is it Disney or Pixar?
Might be Pixar.
DreamWorks.
What inspired one of those ending scenes? Yes. We won't say what though. But next up, talking about fantasy tropes, both traditional and modern. I have The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This is one that again harkens to some traditional fantasy vibes, but utterly sweeps the rug from under you. The tropes are subverted,
and that rug is full of knives.
Many times. those rugs are full of lives, did you say?
Knives.
Oh, knives, right, yes, just knives. Yeah, this is the Broken Binding Special Edition. It's very nice. Its downloads will be coming soon.
What are the Broken Binding? I wonder what they are.
Oh, you wonder, you don't know. They're an awesome bookshop. But yeah, the Blade itself is one of the best debuts I've ever read. How did Joe Abercrombie write this as his first work? Brilliant. Some of the best characters I've encountered.
Apparently he'd written the book before, but he said no one will ever see it because it sucked.
Oh, really? So this was his debut release.
And then he did in Game of Thrones, I think, inspired this, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, he said that was a huge work. And he's kind of taking it a step further, where this is called Grimdark. He is called Lord Grimdark on Twitter, whereas this is where everyone in Game of Thrones, there are characters you're obviously rooting for.
Yeah.
Where there are characters you're rooting for in here, but it's a bit less black and white. There are some very, very grey characters, and there's no one who is just simply cut good or evil.
Yeah.
They're all in the middle. It's all about self-preservation. It's all about survival. There's a lot of humour along the way, and Joe Abercrombie does a great job of balancing that humour with tension and character development, and how those relationships evolve is a particular great thing about the Blade itself. And the whole series, please, this is one of those that I think even people who aren't fantasy fans would really enjoy. The fantastical elements are quite low, aren't they? They come out a bit more in the third book of the series, but mostly it's set in another world, but it all feels real and gritty and brutal and kind of that kind of day-to-day survival. So that is the Blade itself. Sounds like a happy read, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. The next one for me is The Counsellor by E.J. Beaton. Now, this is kind of a political-based fantasy that is full of intrigue, full of character development and study, and it has two fantastic set pieces in it.
It really does, yeah. But it's the political machinations which really have you on
Machiavellian Machiavellian politics, isn't it?
There we go.
And I think The Counsellor is a great debut because it's something that feels very fresh. Although it is fantasy, it feels very much like real life. There are a couple of fantasy aspects, and it felt sometimes like a little bit like the Merlin TV show. I think, you know how you've got the small cast and always associating with each other, and it's it's really
weaving in and out of it.
I think they're
show.
Yeah, obviously this has that political based nature, which you get to know kind of the back dealings between several characters, and you're trying to work out who's who and what's what and who's seeing.
Oh yeah, I love that mystery element.
Yeah, and there is that kind of enigmatic layer beneath the surface of the pages, and it is a little bit like a thriller or a crime as well, because you're trying to find out who committed something, and for what reason.
Got a bit of everything, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think The Counsellor will please lots of people. It's such an easy read. It's really engaging. It's very diverse as well. It's got lots of different types of characters. Got lots of different layers as well beneath it. And I think there's lots and lots to like within the Counsellor.
And I believe this is really, that Library of a Viking really like.
Yeah, Library of a Viking like this one. And I think it will shock lots of readers by how much they actually enjoy it. It's a book that I didn't expect to love, but every time I think of my favourite books, this one always crops up onto the list. And I can't wait for book 2. What's E.J. Beaton doing next? She's doing
another project.
She is doing. Is it Greek?
Greek retelling.
Greek retelling.
Which would be very cool to read. Hopefully we're first in line to get that. But yeah, this is absolutely brilliant, and actually it's got a bit of nostalgic value as well, isn't it? It's the first review we did on the channel.
Yeah, it is the first
review. All that time ago.
And how do we get this book again?
Through Judy Crisp, the agent.
The agent.
Great agent.
Dad's agent as well.
So she's a fantastic agent.
She's super.
Look, she's got an awesome book.
Ta-da!
Next up I have We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle, another author.
Shaikh
Mackle, another author who we have had the pleasure of interviewing on the channel. So if you want to check that out,
that is
please
cool, isn't it?
do. It is awesome. It's crazy how we've actually interviewed some of these authors. It is a bit surreal, and I'm just so pleased that we've had the opportunity to. So this is a bit similar to what I said.
Next, I think we should interview.
Yes, that's definitely attainable.
Oprah Winfrey, the Brothers Gwynne.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a bit similar to what I said with the Blade itself, and that is kind of grimdark, kind of fantasy, but this is a very different take on that. It's incredibly fast paced. It's that kind of every chapter is framed on an event that unfolds, not necessarily action all of them, although there is a lot of that, but something which is really impactful. And there's a great cast of characters here. The premise is, what if the bad guys won? What if Sauron took the Shire? And so this is the aftermath of that. The enemy have won and they're taking over a city, and this is about an array of characters from different demographics and backgrounds and motivations and desires, and how they're all coping without them. Some of them are part of a resistance, some are not part of that, but they're still rebelling in a different way, and you see how these kind of different resistance groups conflict with each other. And then we've got some characters who are just trying to survive, and they are dragged into events around them, and we've got some really nasty perspectives in there as well, but they're done so cleverly, and Mike Shackle does a brilliant job kind of balancing kind of these malicious characters with some who are very there's a lot of depth to them as well, and I really love how the characters grow and evolve with the events that unfold around them, and they just felt real and authentic like that. It's hard to have character growth that feels real, and because people don't really change like that, so it's hard to display it in a book. But I thought Mike Shackle does a really great job, and the whole book overall is absolutely incredible. One of my favourite books
it's
of all time.
It's addictive. This is a book that's really addictive, and you cannot stop it. And for a big book, that is definitely saying something very good.
It really is, and I absolutely loved the next two instalments as well. The entire trilogy. Ed, you need to read on. Have you read book 2 yet?
Yes, I've read book 2.
You read book 2?
Yeah.
But you haven't read book 3. Yeah, that is a chunky book.
It's a big one.
I wish it was even bigger. Because it was a bittersweet ending.
I bet you do.
It was a really bittersweet ending when I got to the end of it and there was no more pages.
Oh, no more pages, yeah. And the next one for me is Blood Song. Blood Song by Anthony Ryan is a fantastic debut. I think this was self-published before it was picked up by Orbit. Orbit, they're pretty good, aren't they?
It's true.
We like Orbit.
We do like Orbit. They're very consistent.
Blood Song is, I think it's basically Name of the Wind, but with a few more swords. I think of it as. Yeah. It is the main character, this geezer here, retelling the story of his life.
And more military.
And it has, with more swords.
More swords.
And that's wind.
That's wind.
It's Name of the Wind without the wind. But that's a good little one.
That is a review.
But Blood Song, I think, one reason why I love it as a debut, it has lots of different elements to it. It has that kind of goes to school element, or goes to university or college, and it's where this character grows up and he's learning to be a part of this sacred order, isn't he? And then it goes on to his life later on, and the bonds that he makes as a child. You see, it is a coming of age story, and then you absolutely feel the heartache, the heartbreak, everything that Vaelin Elsorna feels, you feel with him, and you're right there. And the gut punches hit really, really hard in this book. I think it's so easy to be attached to these characters, and there are some backstabbings, and there are things that will really, really pull at your heartstrings as well. Blood Song also has some phenomenal pacing. It has everything that I would ever want in a fantasy book. It does transport you to a whole different world that feels semi-realistic, but also it has those fantasy elements that we know and love today. There's not too much, is there? There's not like amazing animals and all that kind of stuff. I don't believe in.
And it's a chronicler's tale as well, where you've got this really interesting present situation, and Vaelin Elsorna is telling the story of his past.
Exactly.
Like we see in Empire of the Vampire and stuff like that.
Name of the Wind as well.
Name of the Wind as well.
You're waiting to see what happens at the end when it goes back to present time, which it does. I need to read the next 2 books really, but I've heard they're not as good.
I read book 2.
To be honest, I actually won't read the next 2. I think I'm just going to leave this as a standalone in my head, which I'm very happy with.
I did really enjoy The Wolf Song, which is after this trilogy and is going back to Vaelin when he's older, which I thought was really good. It's one perspective again.
Yeah.
And it's really good.
Very nice.
Very good. Cool. Blood Song, absolutely brilliant book.
Yeah, fantastic.
Agreed. I give you blessing with talking about that.
Thank you, Will.
I agree.
You give me blessing.
I should have had it on my list. But next I have The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. Book 1 of The Burning. I absolutely love The Rage of Dragons. Tau is a whirlwind of a force of a main character who is the driving force of this story. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And this is a story of vengeance, of love and loss, hope and despair. So it's got that whole roller coaster of emotions within this book. And as I said, Tau is a great character. This is a Bildungsroman, a coming of age story as he comes into his own, and as I said, the driving force is his pursuit of vengeance. But then there's some very good questions that's thrown in the mix there. We're rooting for him and we need recompense for some of these characters that have done very bad things, but we're thinking, is it worth how he is kind of sacrificing everything that is that should be important to him in order to get to that pursuit of vengeance? It's kind of that question. Is it worth it?
Maybe.
Maybe. And book 2 is brilliant as well. I loved The Fires of Vengeance. And book 3 is called The Lord of Demons. It's not out yet, but what
Good
a
title.
name. Yeah, I cannot wait for that. And Evan Winter, I just think, brilliant author. And this was also originally self-published. And it was picked up by Orbit. So yeah, some similarities to Bloodsong there on its trajectory. And yeah, The Road to Dragons, absolutely brilliant. More people need to read it. And also, I've not mentioned, guess what? It's got dragons in it.
And the last one for me is The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. And this is a book I read very recently and it's absolutely phenomenal. I think Elodie Harper portrays the 1st century AD, I believe, Pompeii, absolutely breathtaking. Is it AD or BC? AD. And it follows
74 AD,
a small group of 5 central characters who are slave women working, well not working, but slave women in a brothel in Pompeii, and then it just follows their life. And there isn't too much plot, but it doesn't need too much plot because you're just living the lives of these women. You're living lives with one of the women, and it is absolutely phenomenal book. The characters are so endearing, but also amazing women all at once at the same time, and they're breathtaking to read about, and they're very inspirational, and it is a very harrowing and brutal read, but it's one that I would recommend that everyone gave a go because it doesn't shy away from the details, but it doesn't bathe in them either. It doesn't it doesn't ramp them up to a level that is horrifying, does it? Although nature is horrifying, but it's not gratuitous.
But I love the way it's written, where it almost seems normal. It's kind of harrowing in that sense, isn't it? Where it's showing that it's just normal. They go through
a very
this every day.
accomplished writer, I think.
Really brilliant.
Which does such a good job. But there are some really emotional scenes that are gut punches, for sure. And I think people get attached to these characters insanely well.
Yes.
You've read this as well. What do you think?
I absolutely love it. I actually have a review of The Wolf Den on my new channel. It may be out already or may be coming out in a few days, depending on when this video
You've got a new channel?
I do have a new channel.
What?
So yeah, it's called William Gwynne. Basically, because Ed, you are a teacher, aren't you? And you're very busy. So the Brothers Gwynne is the priority. Don't act like you didn't know.
Why have you not told me about this?
Of course. Ed has been very supportive.
Leave a comment below if you think William should stay doing the Brothers Gwynne instead of William Gwynne.
The Brothers Gwynne is the priority, but as I have a bit extra time than Ed, I'll be putting on some other content on there.
And also reviewing Cormac McCarthy books on there.
Not at the moment, no.
Not at the moment?
No, of course, books that we can both review, then we will do on this channel. Let us know if you want any specific book reviews on this channel in the future, or if you want them on
they
my
obviously
one.
want me in the videos as well, Will. Sorry
of course
about
they
him.
do, but you know what?
What does someone say? The handsome brother.
They did say the handsome brother's not going to be with you, which was a blade to the heart for me. But so the handsome.
Probably thought I was starting my own.
So head over to William Gwynne if you don't want the handsome brother in the videos. So there we go. But yeah, the Wolf Den is absolutely brilliant.
Back to the review. That was very smooth. Well, you could tell you've got two channels working overtime.
Exactly.
Freelancer.
My last book, freelancer. Yeah.
So if you have a book that you've written and you want Will to read it, then send them all over to Will.
Every single one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Every single one.
You'll read them all.
Last book I'm talking about today is Shaggy Bane by Douglas Stewart. This is a debut. It won the Booker Prize last year, I believe.
It looks really sad. Just look at the cover. It looks so
I think
sad.
Peter McLean.
Anything with a black and white cover, like A Little Life, that is so sad.
Well, Peter McLean did a tweet after he read this, and it was so funny. Basically, he was just saying it put him into a black hole that he could not climb out of. So yeah, that's why you should read Shaggy Bane. Now, this is a brilliant story. It is very harrowing. It is about the relationship between a son as he's growing up and his mother, who is an alcoholic. And so it's very powerful, very harrowing. They have a beautiful relationship, but one full of tragedy as well. And it's set in 1980s Glasgow, so in Scotland. So it takes a little while to adapt to the vernacular, as Douglas Stewart is very
Scottish,
true, very true to the vernacular and identity of Glasgow, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, really just shows this whole kind of this dynamic of where they live, and you really feel kind of that tone and atmosphere really through the pages. Feel like Douglas Stewart really knows it in and out, and yeah, really accomplished debut. It made me feel so attached to the characters. There's a wide range of emotions that he really hits the peak of during this book, and I just thought, yeah, it's just a brilliant debut, which is very hard hitting and not for the faint of heart. So maybe wait until you feel like you're in a strong mental place to read this, but if you feel able, then I would definitely recommend giving Shaggy Bane a shot.
And there we go. There we have it.
So
Best debuts that we have read.
Exactly.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
It is.
Choosing just 11.
Just 11. But yeah, it's interesting when you work, because as we're picking these out, we're thinking where these authors have gone on from there, and some of them, it's their best work is their debut. I imagine because they pour more time into that than any other book after. Well, it's kind of that pressure to put a book out every year or every other year.
Talking about his first series. We have to do best series for debut series, but he's talking about how he had so many ideas to put in the Faith and the Fallen, and he did use a lot of them, and he said sometimes he wishes he held some back to use
because he feels he didn't use them to the most. Like it'd be like a cool little
kind of
scene or
passing
something,
cool stuff, exactly.
But he could have really grown on them if he saved it for the series.
Definitely.
So kind of that learning, but then also he spent 11 years on Malice before it was published, so it's also that time and heart and blood and sweat and tears put into a debut
and coffee
as well, and coffee.
Lots
of coffee. A lot of coffee. My book reviews would be proud of that. Yeah.
Right then, everyone, thank you for watching our video on the Brothers Gwynne. Fear not, we will not be stopping our videos.
This is the priority.
Only if Will really, gets too big.
Oh, stop it.
If he goes viral. If you start having...
I don't have the funny one in the videos anymore. I have to actually think of jokes now, which is really hard.
That's really nice.
Because usually I'm just like, I can rely on Ed for the jokes, and I'm the one trying to keep the video streamlined and stop the tangents, But
is it weird filming on your own?
Really weird. I keep doing a sentence then looking right, and then I'm like, I can't do that. It took me about 2 hours to record a 16-minute video, so yes.
You do be like that.
Now we can do this almost in one take. Maybe sometimes we drop something. Usually it's when we drop something.
Spill some tea.
We do the take, So there we go. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Do check out the new channel if you're interested. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. And yes, we'll have lots more content coming for the Brothers Gwynne. Sorry, we've been a bit slow lately. You have been very busy. That is a fair point.
I have some great excuses.
But you do, which we may be saying a bit more about in the future. But yeah, we're going to try and get as much content out on here as possible. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you check out a few of the debuts. Thank you for watching.
Truth and Courage, the Brothers Gwynne.
The Brothers Gwynne.